We are here to bring you everything and anything surrounding Porsche. I'm Mike.
I'm Aaron.
And this is PCar Talk.
All right, welcome to another episode of PCar Talk. I'm Mike.
And I'm Aaron.
And let's knock out some stuff. We have a new Sriracha boy. What?
Yep.
So want to thank all those people that are helping support the show. Aaron, do your thing.
Let's
Maestro, hit them up.
Yep. Gonna go with the producers as always. First, we got Brandon J, we got Eric A, and we got Robert G.
Ba -ba 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 -ba.
Yeah, ba -ba -ba -ba. And then the heavy hitters, Sriracha boys. We got Scott H, Matthew G, Brian R, Matthew M, Sean H, Niki F, and now Todd M.
Nice. Thank you guys all for being Sriracha boys and producers. It's very important for us and the livelihood of PCar Talk, meaning the bills get paid as far as our internet, all that good stuff that has to happen.
Lights stay on.
Yeah. Equipment gets serviced. But more importantly, there's another development that's kind of happening behind the scenes as a Sriracha boy thing. So a little bit of info behind that. So between a couple of the Sriracha boys, they were having a conversation when I was up in the mountain because there was a couple of them there. So there might be like a Sriracha boy off too, like meaning like if they're ever together. So this is like an inner competition thing. So if any of the Sriracha boys kind of show up on any of these mountain drives, pretty much whoever the slowest Sriracha boy is has to do a shot of Sriracha at the end of the day.
Well, that makes things fun.
So now things are getting really hot.
Just like
did you pick that
pure,
up? Oh
pure
yeah,
Sriracha.
Pure Sriracha,
Oh,
not mixed
right.
with anything. Like basically a shot cup filled with Sriracha, and you got to
like
shoot that.
tequila and something.
Yeah,
We're
so
good.
that thing will burn a hole in your stomach and in the arse.
Yeah, it's
So,
hot top to bottom.
yeah, exactly. Probably better off yakking that one back up right after you can, like not letting that process because that's
Mike's pro tip.
yeah, like fiery poops literally coming out on that one. But anyways, that's going to be fun.
Speaking of things that don't suck,
Yeah.
the countries that we have listed somewhere.
Yes. So Aaron and I were talking a little bit. We give a lot of shout outs and a lot of thank yous to a lot of places. Also want to thank all of our PCar Talk members, 100 strong with a ever so growing waiting list. If you aren't on the waiting list,
let's get in there.
get on that waiting list because it opens up occasionally when we have somebody drop off, and you really have like basically Aaron I think was nice last time and gave people I think 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, we're gonna do a 24-hour turnaround.
Yeah, I was gonna
next
say
time.
if you don't answer that email and get your sign up in, the door is gonna close back on you again, and you just go back on the waiting list. You can do that on pcartalk.com. Join the waiting list if you're interested.
You just
in
go
that.
to like join the, like you're gonna join the club, and a little pop up or not a pop up, but the page comes up and you can sign in.
And they can also get to the producer and the Patreon stuff to help support us on there too, right?
Yep.
So yeah, so support the guys for the content that you like, and we appreciate everybody that's doing that. So want to give a big shout out to where all the stuff where our downloads are at.
All the countries.
In all the countries, because we were kind of checking out where we're ranked and stuff like that. We kind of float anywhere between 30 and 40 ranked overall on Automotive Podcast, and that's all thanks to you guys with the downloads and subscribes
And the reviews.
And the
That helps,
reviews
too.
help a lot, yeah. And then basically spreading the word too, like for every person who is a listener, get somebody else to listen and put them on basically, just to help them out, not just even just us, because there's a lot of information that we disseminate on this show that maybe doesn't get disseminated anywhere else. And you can pretty much grab all of this, in an hour.
Grab and gather.
Yeah,
wherever.
from us. So obviously, number one's USA. Thank you guys so much.
USA.
That's
USA.
our... Yeah. Okay, USA. Remember that in Bloodsport? Like the big Asian dude who's like, John Claude's about to come in. He's like, okay, USA. Like, but anyways, by far... our biggest downloads per month. Not surprising considering we are American, so that makes a lot of sense. But the surprising number 2 on this list is actually Ireland. Big shout out to them over there. I don't know if they just like our banter and crass, nasty style, because those guys are pub fighters. They're no nonsense type of people, and we're kind of that way too. So that's a shocking. I mean, they're in second place by far.
You think it'd be our apartment neighbors, Canada?
Yeah, I would think so too. And actually, they're like number 5 on this list. United Kingdom's above them too. So big shout out to those guys over in the UK. We have a lot of friends over there. I love it over there. They host a lot of awesome events, and they're very Porsche, enthusiast over there. And we appreciate everybody on that list too. So running down the list, thank you Canada, Australia, Netherlands, New Zealand, Sweden, Germany, and Singapore. Those are the top 10. We're downloaded in many, many more countries.
103 countries, if you want to know.
Okay, thank you for those specifics. But I just want to give a shout out to those top 10. It really, really, really means a lot to us, and I know we say thank yous, and I'm not saying that empty. I mean that. Really, all of the downloads and all of the sharing and all the stuff that ends up happening organically really helps us become what we are, and we're so thankful. And we have some new stuff that's going to be coming down the line, meaning as far as guests happen, because Aaron was able to kind of like discover some technology that makes the sound quality of a phone call maybe a little bit better. So I think we might be calling some of these places. When I say these places, like people like Bisimoto and maybe Rod Emery and a couple of these other guys on the West Coast, and it'll make it a lot easier for us to get those people and not have to travel to them, especially in this COVID type of era. We're not really out of the woods with that yet, and I think it makes a lot of other people comfortable with that too, and it also frees up a lot of time. A
little less expensive too.
Yeah, so stay tuned for a lot more guests probably coming September and moving forward with that. I mean, you'll still hear from us. We'll make sure we break it up. It won't be only guests, but during even Luft, we have a lot of guests planned already to capture too for you guys. So a lot of exciting things to come. I know the dog days are summer. You get to hear a lot of Aaron and Mike.
When's Luft happen? Just for those people that are sleeping on it. There's probably no tickets. I haven't even looked. Do you know?
I think there's still entry tickets, but I think all of the car entry stuff is sold out. I was on their website not too long ago checking that out, and that is all sold out. So but yeah, a lot of guests going to be coming that second week in September. That's when Luft is happening in Indianapolis. Like I said, we already have like 4 or 5 guests, so that's already 4 or 5 weeks of guests planned, because Aaron and I are going on a road trip for basically 7 days. Yep. Hitting up Charlotte for a little bit, gathering up that area. We're going to be in Indy, get a couple people up there. And then, like I said, after that even, we're going to start employing this phone technology and start capturing some maybe West Coast guests or some people even all over the place. And if you have any suggestions for us as guests, or maybe even a lead on a contact for us, go ahead and email us at pcartalk.com. Yep. Or go ahead and DM us on Instagram. That's probably our frequent social media site. And give us that warm lead or possible suggestion. And maybe we already have that in the docket and they're ready to go, and we'll let you know. But yeah, let us know who you want to hear from and hear their story on the show. We always kind of like your feedback on that. So let's get going. So remember Dieselgate with VW, that whole scandal in 15, all that kind of stuff that happened.
Emissions.
Yeah, all of that madness, right? Like a lot of crazy stuff that happened there. Don't need to relive it. If you've been living under a rock, there was a huge fallout. VW was basically fudging admissions on their cars. It was running a different map, so it was all computer mapping. And what they came to find out was, as long as the front tire stays straight, when they would run these cars on the admissions, it would run, the O2 that came out was a lot less. The minute you turn the front steering wheel, then it went to a different kind of tune. Don't ask me why they did that, but
in school, and in fact,
I saw how they figured that out. Like, I watched the investigative report of how that was cracked, and that's how they figured that out. And it was by accident, because the person who was driving the car on, I guess, the admissions dyno, because you have to drive it, accidentally bumped the steering wheel, and this thing is like continuously monitoring. And then they went back and read, I guess, the report, and they were like, why did it spike for a brief second here? Like, so they had to go back and evaluate exactly what happened. The guy like bumped the steering wheel with his leg just because he moved in the car, and just that alone, boom, the O2 spiked up or whatever, or the emissions spiked up, the CO2 spiked up. So they were able to discover it that way. So it was come to find out that VW programmed that in to cheat that test, so they could get away with selling those cars in the U.S. So they got away with that. So they ended up getting dealt a $38 billion, B as in Bravo, fine all the way across. It's a lot of money, right? So if that, we'll get into this debate. Like, we'll go there real fast before we get too far off topic. Okay. If all that money gets fined, if that goes to the EPA or wherever that money goes, I know it gets disseminated to probably to some of these cars.
Like better roads, or?
Well, I'm just kind of saying, like, why the hell are we getting taxed so much and like on so much other things? But anyways, that's a whole nother topic, right? Like $38 billion again, like.
There was a time you could make some good money on Jettas.
I need to start a government, man, because that is the racket. Like, you just literally do nothing and then you just cash in. Like, on everybody. Like, oh, you sold something, give me money. Oh, you bought something, give me money. It's just
Welcome to Mike-topia.
Yeah, something. I don't know what you want to call it. But anyways, so Porsche is getting dealt a lawsuit by the U.S. No details on it yet, but if it even gets close to $38 billion, that's a lot of money. So what are your thoughts on this? Do you think that could be a very, I mean, obviously we know financially that's a detrimental thing. Would that set Porsche back a lot, or do you think that's kind of something that they're not going to even worry about and they just keep on moving? Or
I think they might be glad that they're owned by VW. Like, hey, you guys have dealt with this before, figure it out. That sort of thing. And the money is not, there's more money than it would have been just them by themselves. They have to be worried about it because it's, I mean, depending on the impact, if it's the whole lineup, if it's some of the lineup, do they just take the fine and keep making or keep driving towards full electric vehicles?
Yeah.
And maybe that's why they're pushing so hard to
I know
get that
that's
stuff out.
exactly why VW's in it. Like, they're trying to make right of a wrong situation that they played. I think the only saving grace really with Porsche, though, and I don't really know if it is they self-identified. They weren't caught, but I think they felt like eventually they were going to get busted. Maybe, I don't know. It's one of those things where you're kind of like, hey, our cars did this too. Like, so they kind of just self-identified and said, hey, we're guilty, even though you didn't say we were guilty. So I'm thinking maybe they're hoping there'll be some mercy,
some leniency.
Yeah, some mercy let because they self-identified, as opposed to saying, oh, you got to find me. But maybe they would have never found him. Who knows? I think this could, like, public eye wise, like, this could get a lot of bad press.
For sure. Yep.
A lot of bad press, especially when a lot of their cars are coming out in these coming years to say, hey, this is what's going on. But I think the people that are going to buy their cars are going to buy their cars anyways. I think what's going to happen is maybe that millennial gap may get a frowny face with Porsche on that, to say, like, oh, you guys, I'm not buying a car from you because you polluted the environment. Other than pretty much every automaker was actually doing this. And I'm not saying US-wise, I can't speak domestically. Mercedes-Benz is just as guilty as this too, because this is years ago on the article. They just weren't confirmed, but their software was doing the same thing. It was always kind of things like, we know you shot them too, but, like, no one else can identify you and we can't find the murder weapon. Yeah. And they're like, I ain't saying shit. I didn't do nothing.
Yeah. If I don't bring it up, nobody's going to say
exactly.
anything.
And I think Mercedes-Benz is taking the opposite, road that Porsche's taken. They're like, we are not self-identifying.
Well,
hell to the no. Like, you are going to have to prove without a doubt that I'm guilty.
That'd probably be a massive fine for them because everything's used over there, diesel-wise. They have, work trucks, everything. So
I think there'll be some kind of, maybe be a customer fallout on this. But oddly enough,
maybe not, because it may just be skimmed over, like we said.
This might just be kind of a money thing, This might just be like, hey, you got to pay this fine and whatever, because clearly,
do you think they get a Porsche tax on top of it? Do you think they just, VW $38 billion, huh? Try $100 billion.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's tough, and I think I know that's why both of these companies are heavily invested into EV stuff. Why they're hardcore into it, because I think they're trying to
turn a new leaf,
save face. Save face in the sense of, hey, yeah, we know we did that and we shouldn't have did it, but you make it tough for us to sell cars, bro. Come on, let's be honest.
We're going great now.
Yeah, but we're on board. We're on board. So I think it's one of those things, but I don't know. We'll see. I think there's going to be more that comes out. No details yet, because clearly they're in the midst of the legal battle, so they can't share what's going on. So after the fallout of this, we'll hear exactly what's come of it, and I think that's why maybe there was such a push with all the EV. We built this whole factory just to do EV stuff. So, like, when they go to defend themselves and all their attorneys are there, they're like, look at all these things that we're doing. We know we screwed up. Like, we're doing all of this stuff. We're trying to make right. We're trying to not have a global impact. We're sorry, type of deal.
Don't look at our Turbo GT, Cayenne, and Panamera. Don't bother with that.
Yeah. So next on the topic, 25 years of Manthey Racing and Porsche being together, working together as partners. So there's a special Gt2 RS Club Sport, not to be confused with the previous Club Sport in 18, because there is one of those as well. So this is called the Club Sport 25. It does look different though. It's a full carbon body. It doesn't have your typical rear fender flares in the sense of like there's the hole in the side where it gets air induction. These are kind of more almost like, you know, 935 box flares almost.
They're boxed.
On the rear of this car, and that's where the air inlet's on this. So that actually looks pretty cool. It's kind of maybe a throwback homage thing. So it's not like the 935 race car, which also not to be confused because that's on that same platform as well. That has box flares too, but this has normal Porsche headlights in the front, box flares in the rear, swan neck on this one, not like on the other Club Sport. So it's got the newer 992 Gen style swan neck, big RS wing, like basically RSR style, hanging out the back. 690 horsepower, only making 30 of them, and only 6 are coming to the U.S.
I think they had made 25. I wonder what the 5 must be for the like Porsche family or something somewhere.
Who knows, man. So this is a full-on race car. This is not a street car, just like those other ones. You have to. They're not. You cannot register them. They're only for race car use only. So they don't have a street legal VIN, and these things are going to cost $620,000.
Is that cheaper than the first gen Club Sports?
No, it is not.
Okay.
The first gen Club Sports were for something.
Okay. I was thinking if this was kind of anywhere near production,
and this is a lot less being made too. Yeah. I think they made way more than that on the last one. I say way more, I'm like triple this number. So yeah, maybe 90, but that's still a lot more than 30. So obviously anything, we've talked about this over and over and over again, and our listeners are pretty educated about this. The lower the number of the car, usually the more
$1 million car already.
Oh, 100%, right? Do you find that to be odd though? Because let's be honest, most of these people that are buying these cars aren't probably going to track them on anyways. And maybe there's a couple.
I think the guys in Europe, I think it's going to be mostly a European buyer.
Okay, how about the 6 that come to the U.S.? I think they're going to be sitting somewhere. Maybe there might be one boss out there who's going to drive his on the track. Yeah. Like one. And it's probably on a private track, so no one's going to see it anyways. But anyways, I digress.
Good for him. Or her.
Do you think, like you said, I'm just going based off, use the $1 million car already. Do you think we've dawned into a different era of Porsche? Because they're selling these, before they used to sell homologated cars, right? I guess where I'm going with this. Like they used to have a 993 GT2, and they made, 18 of them or something for homologation, right? So they could run that car at Le Mans. And those cars are selling, in the millions of dollars. And they're super special cars, but they're street legal. And that's also kind of in this production line, 18 cars, 30 cars, something like that. But those are street legal. Do you think they kind of missed the boat on this? Do you think they should have made this street legal to make this maybe more of a presence and where people could see it, I guess?
I would say, I almost say no. The only reason I would say no is because I was watching something recently with Matt Farah when he was driving Lee's Cup car. And he said the experience with that is such a different level than from a street car. Even, the GT products, it's such a gap there that you'd never realize it, even no matter how much you tried to make it into that. So I think they're tapping into the market that's like, I'm a race car driver, or at least amateur, or at least, put in the time for those people that are going to use it. So I guess that's the market they're cornering. And they could do a street version, but I think they've kind of, again, we're not looking at it like a lineup, but it's their race car market. So that's that beyond the GT.
Yeah, race car collectability, maybe. I kind of look at it this way. It's almost, and I use a lot of other comparisons, in other parallel worlds or something. It's almost having the most expensive cutlery in the kitchen. I'm talking about the most ridiculous expensive, whoever makes it top level, hundreds of thousands of dollars for this stuff. And you don't want to cut a steak with that because
it's pretty.
Well, you spent so much for it and you don't want to screw it up, right? And it's, what I mean by that is it has a purpose, but it's not being used for that purpose. And we've talked about this over and over again. None of these cars, I feel like it's a shame in a way, because prime example, there's not really a series for these cars. This is a special car to be made and collectible for customer sale and customer buying. But I almost feel like, again, this is Porsche in a way playing on the emotions of the wealthy Porsche enthusiast, because I think it just would make more sense. Like if they sold like RSR cars.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, see, exactly. But they're racing those cars, right? And yes, they do sell those cars, but they sell them to other race teams. And guess what those race teams do with them? They race them.
It's weird.
But it's almost kind of like retired 917s. Granted, that's from 50 years ago. But when you see them racing at Rennsport, or we're going to see them in Indy doing their thing with Porsche Motorsports, you know, in North America doing their thing, that kind of makes sense, right? The retired race cars are doing that. These are race cars, but they're not retired from anything because they didn't do anything. So they don't have any provenance.
Yeah, you bring up a good point.
There's no provenance there.
No.
It's like you're buying a race car. Yes, they're limited. But you could say that about anything. You're like, we only made so many 911 GT3Rs. And yes, you know, Wright's Motorsports races one, and Allegra Motorsports raced one, and this one raced one. And you bought one, but you never raced in any of those series, but you have one. Cool for you.
Yeah, I mean, they can only force somebody so much to put it on track. But then if they gave them like if they did, that Club Sport series didn't last that long.
I think it was like one season.
Yeah.
Or so 2 seasons. I stand correct. I think it was 2 seasons.
But again, there's limited production, so you can only have, you're going to field so many people that have time to do that. But I think like the Cup Series, the Carrera Cup Series, if they did a Club Sport Series or could fund it some way, Porsche could do that. Then maybe it does take off. Maybe they do get more use out of those cars.
Yeah, and I guess for me, I'm thinking, I guess it's not necessarily the correct way to think of things, but when I think of race cars, and I think of valuable race cars, anywhere down the line, okay, even you can go from the modern standpoint, like the Brumos car that won at Le Mans, or the Ping Pig that won at Le Mans, that RSR. That car has value because it won that race. And then that goes all the way down the lineage, right? Like a 935. Oh, this car won Le Mans. This car won Spa. This won that. So, yes, it is a race car on its own, and that's cool, but there's a huge gap between a race car, even if it was made from that area and it did nothing, and if it won. Even at auction, it shows that. Yeah. So, I guess this number to me is a little shocking. Just because it's a low-number car doesn't make it that valuable, though.
Do you want the factory team to go race with it and then win something and then...
No, I'm just saying it doesn't make sense to sell a race car at such a limited number to me that never raced in a series and not really going to have anything, and it costing so much. Because like with that number, you know, you think about that, like that's a crazy number. Granted, you can't take that number and go buy
you can
a race car. Well, I'm saying like you can't go buy a race car with provenance now because that's a thing. But 10 years ago, that really wasn't a thing. You could still go buy race cars that did do things, and it wouldn't cost that much to do that. If you went hunt down, like, you know, cars that the 997, you know, the Flying Lizard car, you could easily get that car for a lot less, and that car did way more than any of these other cars, and has way more, and it's a race car. If you just want to own a race car,
I do.
No, I know, I do too. I just this doesn't make sense. It seems like and maybe because, and that goes back to what I was saying. Are they playing on the heartstrings 100%. Of the wealthy Porsche enthusiast? I think they are, because, hey, guess what? You're a billionaire with a B, and you're one of the 6 guys that I picked. And this car's $620,000. There's only 6 of these coming to the U.S., and we're only ever making 30 of them. Do you want one? You're like, you know, stepbrother style. You're like, yep.
Yep.
And not without even thinking. You're just like, yep. Instead of saying, throttling back to being like, okay, 620, like, thank you for the honor. But then again, it's almost one of those things, like, once you say no, you're never asked again, right? And it's like, it's one of those kind of things. They're strong arming on a deeper level even on that, because they know if they say no, they'll never get offered something else. So it's this
you can't sriracha boy somebody.
There's this huge dichotomy going on within the Porsche world at that deeper level, at the high-end level. Even those guys are getting strong-armed.
Well, I mean, if you have your GT2RS, and then you bought the Club Sport last time, and now you have the 25-year Club Sport, I mean, maybe it's your thing. Maybe you're a GT2RS guy.
I think you got to, when you have that kind of money, you just got to say yes, because you don't know when the next cool thing's going to come out, and you say no, and now you don't get a hypercar. You don't get a shot at a hypercar. I think,
you know what? I think you nailed that right there. I think everybody's clamoring for a hypercar. Nobody knows when it's coming out. But they know they want the shot.
it's the best brainwashing, strong arm mafia move, whatever you want to call it, that Porsche's got. And they're not the only not the only manufacturer who does this. Ferrari does this to their people. Lamborghini does this to their people. You think anybody in the world can just get an SVJ when those came out? Hell no. Like, you had to have been buying Lambos forever, and tons of them. Same thing with Ferrari. You think you could get one of those Alpertas brand new? Hell no. You know how many people want those things? I just think it's kind of a shame, but I guess that's just kind of the game, right? Like, they created that, and you can choose to live in it or not, I think.
Yeah, I mean, in a percent, like you said, but if you're a billionaire, even if you're close to a billionaire, that percentage is nothing.
Same thing was, we talked about, you and I talked about this offline, about how sick some of the Aston cars are, right? Like the Valkyrie and all these things that they've made. And we talked about, man, I would jump ship if I could afford one of those. But you really can't. You got to think about it. Like Aaron made a good point, because I was, for some reason, not thinking this way. But Aston's the same way. You've had, not only do you have to have provenances buying so many cars with them, you have to have provenance of who you are in life, too. You have to be like royalty, literally. The Prince of Wales or something to get one of those cars. When they're only making like 15 of them, who do you think is going to get those cars? I'm talking about like some of the richest sultans in the world, right? Because they...
Nobody got to question your bank account. It's just like, you want it? All right.
Well, it's not even just that. It's for them getting clout by you owning that car too, and you being part of their clientele. Be like, oh, the Sultan of this owns it. Oh, the Prince of Wales has one, and then Mike Geisert in St. Pete has one. They're like, who the fuck is that guy? Yeah, that's not even a good look for them. They don't want that. So I just think it's one of those things. I'm thankful I'm not in that, because I think I have enough sense too, where I know people do this too, because I've talked to people that were kind of on that outer edge where they were getting strong armed and they got tired. They were just like, I'm done buying all these cars, waiting for the next opportunity, because that's what it is. That's all that they're kissing the ring, waiting for that hypercar, like you said, that hasn't come yet. They're waiting for this, whatever this is, if that's what they want. This special Club Sport 25 that you can only drive. Yeah, it looks badass, but there's a lot of Porsches that look badass, and you can drive them on the road. So I don't know. I think if they made it street legal, I think it would have just been a little bit better, and they could have done that. They just opted
They
not.
could have charged just as much.
They could have charged even more because it was street legal.
Maybe that's another. Maybe they have some on the back, and they're like, hey, guess what?
I don't know. I think they should have done it just because I think the people that are going to own these anyways, they are the people that want to show and display this thing and maybe drive it occasionally on the road, well, I mean, as opposed to the track.
The 935s, we didn't think we'd see a lot of those be driven, and Pikes Peak car happened, and some other stuff happened. They tracked those, so.
Well, so the real reason is because Porsche hosted a 935 event and basically invited everyone who bought that car and paid to ship all of those cars to go run in Europe together. That's why that happened. Otherwise, we wouldn't have seen them run, because I think they probably listened to the peanut gallery, not us specifically, but just the voices all around the world to be like, that's great. No one's ever going to see those things. And they're like, oh, yeah? Well, we'll pay millions of dollars to make everyone see it then.
We'll probably see some they're not Rennsport, but Porsche Fest, whatever it's called.
Exactly.
The Porsche Fest.
The Porsche Fest. But yeah, that's what's going on there. So what do we have next? We want to congratulate WeatherTech Racing, P1, at Road America. Big up to them. RSR coming in strong.
Yeah, Mike was watching.
I was actually watching for a change, and I don't always get to see those races. Sometimes I'm on the road, I'm moving around, I'm doing things. Big up to PAF.
Yeah.
They placed first. Our buddy Vanther was back in the car, even though he was banged up. Congratulations to them. And then Wrights Motorsports finished P3, right? So pretty strong showing.
Which has not been the case for the last few races.
No, it hasn't. Obviously, the New Balance team is doing pretty well. I'm not even going to mention what you know what I'm talking about when I say that. Yeah. Man, I really wish they would run that livery on their car. That would actually make me like them a lot more.
Oh yeah.
If they just leaned into it, like if they put like Wranglers and and New Balance on that car, I'd be like,
Mike and I talked offline.
I was like, hell yes.
Yeah, there should be a Harley Davidson sponsor. That would.
Oh, that too.
That would crush.
But anyways, big race coming up, 24-hour Le Mans, happening next weekend, not this coming weekend when you hear it, but the following weekend. So this is a really good momentum push. If you're not a race fan, you don't understand it. Obviously, if you have half a brain, you can use some logic. If your car's running strong up into that, you're probably not going to screw with it a whole bunch. So you got a pretty good running car, pretty strong. So I'm excited to see that race. I'm sure everybody else that's a race fan is excited to see that race. I'll be watching as much of it as I can.
Yeah, they need to qualify like 5th or 6th just so they don't get BOP'd and then show out.
Yeah.
That's what needs to happen.
Well, you know, this statistically on the BOP year, like how it works, Corvettes were new last year, so they couldn't BOP. So if anybody's probably going to get a hammer of a BOP, it should be the Corvette team. Because that's generally how it works. When you have the new car, they don't really know how to BOP you. Usually you get the hammer the next year, and that's what happened to Porsche last year. They got the hammer because they didn't have it the year before. So hopefully they give them the business, and then we can get a nice race out of our car on that end, because that was a struggle to watch last year when they were there. I didn't look into it, but do you know, are they going to allow fans at Le Mans this year?
I have no idea. I think it's ever changing right now.
Yeah. Hopefully they do, because it's kind of strange to see that place empty and not a bunch of people. If you don't know, Le Mans usually is a madhouse. There's, what, probably 500,000 people at any given time because there's so much camping and stuff like that there. But yeah, nevertheless, it's going to be a great race. If you've never watched it before, at least tune in for a few hours and watch it. Do yourself a favor, learn a little bit, watch some auto racing, because it's really interesting to watch the team work over an entire day period to keep the car alive, first of all.
Yeah.
It's survivability, right? Like
Survivor.
Yeah. As we know, like you really just want to make it down into those last few hours of the race and try to stay on the lead lap as much as possible. And that's when all the magic really starts to happen. But yeah, nevertheless, it's going to be a great race. So we have something interesting. Aaron and I were on a friend of ours, Catlin, who is in Corpus Christi. She has a radio show out there, and we were guests on her show this past Saturday for a 30-minute call. Great honor to be asked to be on that show, to be a guest on that show. She has a thing called Beer 30, so she does like 30 minutes with automotive guys, and you know, she chose us for this segment. So the second half of this show, we're going to play that. So bear with us on that. Aaron has to edit some out. There's a lot of commercials and there's kind of some music in there, but that's going to be edited out. So it may get chopped together a little strange. So I'm just warning you on that side of it. But it's actually an interesting talk. It's kind of interesting to see how the radio world works as opposed to the podcasting world. I really like the world that we're in, because they have to splice in a lot of stuff on their end. And it seems a little bit, yeah, they have a lot of time constraints. And towards the end, we kind of get cut off, because we actually ran out of time, and I know that's shocking because we get a little long-winded. Yeah. But so I'm giving you full disclaimer as you're listening to it. So like when you listen to this second half of this show, you're not like, what the F was that? Yeah. So that's what the F this is that you're going to be listening to after this break. However, I think it's worth listening to. That's where we're putting it in. And she's a good person too, and you know, we've become good friends over the last couple years. So
I think it's called the Bad Blonde Radio Show.
Yeah. So and she knows her stuff too. It's not like she's just a voice and a pretty face. Her father owns a place. You know, she grew up around
Shook Enterprises. Just in case you guys are.
She grew up around cars and restoration and all that kind of stuff. So she has a vast knowledge on a lot of fronts on a lot of cars. So yeah, give her a look on Instagram. She has a pretty strong following on there. And we appreciate her having us on the show, and we appreciate all of you listening to us. So a little treat, you get to hear us on something outside of what we do, but kind of like explaining what we did with her and having some fun.
Yep.
All right. We'll talk to you guys on the next one. Enjoy the second half of the show.
All right, my friends. You are back listening to the Bad Blonde Radio Show on News Talk KEYS. And I am very excited. It is bottom of the hour, Beer 30, and you know what that means.
Hey, yo.
Woohoo, we're going to pop some beers, and I got my buddy, Mike and Aaron from PCar Talk on the line. Hey, guys.
How's it going? How are you guys?
Oh, I'm so excited. Dude, I am still bummed that I missed y'all at the last Amelia Island.
I know. I was hoping we'd run into you there, since that's where we met initially. So that would have been really nice to see you again. But I understand, so many things are going on, and everything's getting crammed now with all these car events all around. So it's kind of challenging. We understand.
Did y'all go and have steak night without me?
We certainly did.
Obviously, yeah.
Oh my God!
We had to.
I'm hurt. That was so nice. So these guys, we made friends at Amelia Island 2020, which is before we got so lucky to go and enjoy this. It was before COVID started canceling things, and they were like, "Hey, we're going to do our steak night. You want to come?" And I was like, "Steak? Yes."
Yeah.
What was the name of the place?
What was the name of it, Aaron? I think
it remains secret, so it can be our place.
Yeah, it's like it's something very simple. I think it's Frank's. I think you're right. But yeah, if you go to Amelia Island, anyone, don't ever go there because it's terrible. So don't blow our spot up.
No, yeah. Nobody, don't go there. Don't like it. No, nothing. So guys, what are y'all drinking? I have a Shinerbach light blonde that there we go, popping it right there. What are y'all drinking over in Florida?
I'm on a silver bullet this morning.
What does that mean?
Coors Light.
Oh, you know what? I knew that.
What is that?
Aaron, what are you drinking, buddy?
I'm going to break the rules and do a whiskey. So it's a Yamato whiskey, Japanese whiskey.
All right. Party on, my friends. That's right.
I was like, man, you guys are getting it down over there. What is it, 10:30 in Texas right now? You guys are popping beers?
It is 10:30, and I've already had somebody on the text line accuse me of having a liquid breakfast. She's not wrong.
What's that saying, right? Like, you can't get drunk if you don't drink all day, so you got to start first thing in the morning, so...
Exactly. Thank you, Mike. Good mind, great minds think alike. That's for sure.
Usually we just have one.
Yeah, we try.
That's how it starts.
Yeah.
If not, you end up having a bad day for...
Yeah, it's a little early start, huh?
Exactly, and I got to make a car video at some point. So, guys, I want y'all to tell the listeners, what is PCar Talk?
Okay, so PCar Talk is basically, Aaron and I are pretty much Porsche junkies, and at one point, there wasn't like a Porsche only podcast, so we kind of searched high and low for one. There's a lot of people that kind of do something very similar, but they spin off on a lot of different tangents, and we just wanted something very, very specific. So what it encompasses, it's us giving Porsche news, talking about things that are happening in the Porsche world, also having guests from Porsche, either race car drivers that Porsche allows us to have on the show. We've had their CEO, other Porsche enthusiasts, I'm going to name drop a little bit, like John Oates, like some of those kind of people come on the show, and we talk about basically Porsche stuff and their history with Porsche. And then we share our own personal adventures, because we do a lot of rallies and events we go to, so we report on, like you mentioned one, Amelia, something similar to that. And it's kind of just started with 3 years ago, just something Aaron and I kind of wanted to do for fun, and it kind of snowballed into like a much bigger thing, which we do appreciate, which we didn't think there'd be anybody who want to listen to us, but
like 2 people maybe.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Fabulous. I didn't realize it was a whole 3 years ago that y'all started that.
Yeah, we're 140 episodes in now, so it's pretty intense.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. So we do it once a week. It releases every Thursday. We have not, I'm going to knock on wood here, we haven't missed a week yet in 3 years, even with COVID and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
That's not easy. That's not easy to do because, you know what I mean, just things pop up in general.
Yes.
Where can people find it on? Is it on Spotify? Or?
Yeah, it's on Spotify. It's on iTunes.
Stitcher, Google Play, everywhere.
Pretty much any listening device. And if you want to just listen on our website, that's an option too. Everything's free, so you can log in.
What is y'all's website?
PCarTalk.com. So it's pretty simple. So even if you're not a Porsche person, if you want to learn some stuff about Porsche, we do go over kind of similar to you, like with your videos when you talk about certain cars and things like that. We give some information about Porsches, a lot of unknown things or maybe known things, and kind of educate people as well.
For sure. Awesome. And how, let's start Because Mike, weren't you like a big BMW guy before you started into, or was that somebody else I was talking to, Amelia?
That wasn't me. No, but my background kind of like how I went into Porsche. I kind of just spiraled into it. Like I was a big VW guy, like air-cooled VWs. Like
cool.
yeah, split window buses and like early Beetles, like things like that. So fortunately, as my career grew, so did my bank account.
Yeah,
so my flavor changed a little bit. I still wanted something air cooled, but German. So the next step, at least for me, logically, was to go to like a classic Porsche from like VW. Basically, that's how I transitioned to Porsche.
A logical transition.
It really is.
Yeah, I thought so. I seem to think so.
Yes.
Still working.
Yes, exactly. What about you, Aaron? How did you fall into this?
It was.
Into this love?
I started off kind of like Mike with the Volkswagen style, but just more of a GTI versus the air-cooled stuff. And then I started off with a 944 way back at like 09, and that was good for. It was good for about like maybe a year. It caught on fire. So.
Yeah. So I gotta ask, because y'all have interviewed some pretty darn cool folks. Obviously, Oates from Hall & Oates. That's a big deal.
Which one was Oates?
Yeah.
Which one was Hall? No, seriously.
John Oates.
John Oates is the littler one with the dark hair
And the mustache.
Okay. Yeah, he had some good hair back in the day.
I think they both had good hair.
Oh yeah, they had really good 80s hair, those guys.
What would you say is the strangest or the weirdest thing that y'all have heard or talked about on your podcast?
I'm going to say probably some of the weirder stuff that we've got to do. Like when we had the CEO of Motorsports, of Porsche Motorsports on the show, he kind of shared some stuff, inside stuff, that none of us kind of knew. And that was kind of strange, where they were working on some type of like hybrid 911 that they were racing around, and now we're going to probably see a hybrid 911, and they were kind of doing this 10 years ago, he was saying, and they were kind of playing with that technology already, and he was kind of sharing that, and that's kind of like internal skunk works type stuff, and every once in a while we'll get some really weird information like that. So that was really new to us, and I kind of feel like we know a lot of stuff, and we had no idea that even existed. So, and it was kind of cool for the head guy to kind of share that, so that we were both kind of taken back by that when I was like, oh my goodness, okay.
That was pretty crazy.
Yeah, so.
What are your thoughts on Porsche after Volkswagen took over ownership?
I think it's actually helped the company a lot, to be completely honest with you. It's helped them develop, it's helped them scale properly, because before they were kind of, I mean, not kind of, they were a family-owned company, and from what we were told from the inner workings, they kind of had to get rid of some of the family members, as bad as that sounds, that actually worked in the facility, that were like executives, because there were too many hands in the pod, essentially, and they needed a more corporate structure. So I think it really balanced them and helped them out a lot.
Do you think it's going to help in their technology and design? I don't know. I work on a fair amount of them, and sometimes I don't like the Volkswagen influence I see in parts of it. Yeah,
that's kind of always been a bugaboo with that kind of stuff, unfortunately. So when they try to scale across the board and they're using all of those products in all of the other cars, that kind of happens. And I agree with you. That's not really a favorable situation, unfortunately, but it's kind of
like
collateral damage.
It reminds me of getting in like a Murcielago or a Gallardo and then seeing the same door switches and stuff that would be on a 2006 Jetta.
Exactly.
Like where, something doesn't feel right here.
Exactly. You're like,
It's a little different.
You're like, I look at this instrument cluster looks really familiar. Oh, this is in an Audi A4, and I'm in a $300,000 car. How does that work?
And I don't like seeing that, because it just takes away from the car to me.
Oh, I totally agree with you. It's unfortunate, and it's funny you bring that up, because it is. You see that, replicated over and over again. And if you're paying attention and you're familiar enough with that stuff, it's kind of a hard sell, especially from a consumer standpoint, because if you're going in there and you know what you're looking at, you're like, these, like you just said, these are window switches out of a Passat. Like,
see the stamps.
This is a problem.
Yeah, or the Audi TT, or And hopefully Porsche, I don't see. I see it somewhat, especially more on the Cayennes, I think.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Is a crossover vehicle, which the Cayenne, the V6 is basically
it's a Touareg. Yeah, it's like you undo the headlights and it says product of Volkswagen on it. So it's kind of one of those things. You're like,
unless you get to the V8s and the turbos, the basic Touareg is you're driving a Volkswagen. I'm sorry.
Exactly. You just paid a lot more for yours. That's all. Right.
Aiden's in the box laughing over there.
Exactly. It's like you just got hustled.
Well, because Aiden has a Cayenne.
Oh, okay. Well, to be fair, I have one. I have one also. It's a Cayenne S, but when I work on it, I see Volkswagen parts all over it, and I'm like, there's two ways to look at it, right? There's the positive side of, okay, when you go to buy parts, they're Volkswagen parts, so they're not that expensive. So that's the bonus. But on the bad side of it, it's a Porsche that has Volkswagen parts on it. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I guess if you spend all that money and then you kind of want something that's not a mass produced or taken from this car and put on this car,
Oh, 100%. 100%. I totally agree with that.
I don't,
Sure.
Are we coming up on?
Yeah, no, Aiden just whispered in my ear that we're going to take a little break. Y'all are going to stay with us, right, for the next part?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, guys, if you're just now tuning in, this is the Bad Blonde Radio Show, and we got the PCar Talk guys. So stay tuned. We're going to keep talking all about Porsches. All right. Hello, my friends. You are back listening to the Bad Blonde Radio Show on News Talk KEYS, 1440 AM and 98.7 FM, Corpus Christi, Texas. And we are having a great old time. We have the PCar Talk podcast on the line. And if y'all have any questions for them, don't hesitate. Actually, don't call in because we got them on the line. But you can text at 525397. Mike and Aaron, we got you on there?
Yes, we're here.
Yay! I don't know how radio works still, so I'm always amazed when the caller still stays on the line.
Hey, that's good. You just keep it fresh, right?
Keep it fresh. That's right. So, guys, if you're my listeners, if you're listening in, if you want to know about all the up-to-date news going on with Porsches or antidotes or interviews, all you got to do is go to y'all's website, which is
PCarTalk.com.
Yeah. And it happens every week. Every Thursday y'all upload, right?
Yep. Again, that's on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you want. I mean, you can go to the website and listen if you prefer. But, we're pretty much everywhere, fortunately. So that's a good thing and bad thing, I guess, right? So we better never do anything bad in the limelight.
Nice.
So if any of our listeners are familiar with the newer 911s, and if y'all, the people we're talking with, all I'm sure are, what do you think about that clock stuck in the center of the dash?
That checking noise.
Who came up with that and why?
So that is a sports chrono clock. So it's supposed to be a track timer. So basically, if you use a sports chrono watch, even on your watch, if you hit the time hand and you start your lap, it'll basically count your lap time. So that's the purpose of that. It started in the 997 generation, which is a 2005-ish 911. So it's more of a modern thing. They used to do it back in the day, handheld with like tag hewer, as you imagine, like track style stopwatches. And they would actually mount those to the dash via magnet or something to that effect, or Velcro or whatever they could do.
Tape.
And they would hammer those, and then they would run, in the vintage cars, they would get their lap times that way.
Lap times and splits. Yeah.
So it's there to generate lap time. Let's be honest, most of the people driving them, and they're driving to work or the mall. So I don't know if they're timing their Dairy Queen run or something, but
I guess
I know I do.
I guess I get the ode to the vintage, taping the watch to the dash or something, but it just looks out of place.
Yeah, it does look a little odd. It takes some getting used to. Fortunately, my modern one doesn't. You can. It's an option. You can either option it in or out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
There you go.
So obviously you'd option out. So it's not. It's not required. You don't get stuck with it. So that's the nice part.
My Cayenne has one, but I don't use it.
Yeah. Why does the SUV have one?
Good question. I don't know. Like you said, they're probably clocking their time to Dairy Queen, which I respect that. So what are y'all driving right now? I don't know if y'all are driving the same thing from Amelia Island 2020?
Well, I'll go first. No, I sold my 911 about a month ago, and now I'm driving a Cayenne S 2012.
Fun.
Mm-hmm. And then I think when I saw you then, I had a 911 Turbo 2005 Turbo S. That's on consignment for sale in Miami right now. And then I bought a 2007 GT3. I still have the 1990 911 with the Marlboro livery on it. I think it didn't have that.
Yeah, when did you get, Mike, when did you get that? Did you have that back then?
I had that, but I didn't bring that car to Amelia.
Yeah.
But yeah, that car is a very, very fun car. That's my vintage 911, and then
When was the end of the air-cooled Porsche?
97.
Yep.
97, okay.
Yep, 1997. And then I daily drive a Cayenne around. So those are two of my track/mountain cars, and then I putz around a mall getter.
Now, wait. Which came first? You owning a cowboy hat or you having the Marlboro livery on your Porsche?
I have had that cowboy hat. The Marlboro livery came afterwards, so it kind of just like worked out. And
Subconsciously.
Yeah, you knew I was going to ask that.
Yeah, great question, by the way. So I brought it on when I went on one of the rallies. I brought that hat with me, almost kind of a goof. But then I wore it, and then like my buddy Mark took a picture of me driving on the interstate with it, and then that picture kind of became like iconic, I guess. And they're like, "Man, that is perfect, cowboy hat with that kind of car and all that," and then like perfect. And
yeah, we're 100% pro that here in Texas. You know what I mean?
I bet it makes total sense, right?
Yes. So wait, I forgot. Where are y'all exactly in Florida?
We're over on the Gulf side. We're over in St. Petersburg, Tampa Bay area, and that Gulf side, kind of midway through the state. So we actually share the same ocean as you.
Yes, we do. The Gulf of Mexico is pretty dope. Hey, have y'all been, so in St. Petersburg, they have the Tampa Bay Automobile Museum. Have you been there? It's pretty rad. It's like one of my favorites.
I actually haven't. I've lived here all my life, actually, so I've not been there.
You need to go, and if you go to the gift, they have one of my favorite gift shops too.
Okay.
Buy me one of the coffee mugs, and I'll send you my address.
Okay.
And,
so you're already you're hustling me already to buy you gifts. I love it.
Yeah, and I'll send you my T-shirt size also.
Okay, I didn't realize you were buying gifts. I was making notes right now. Assistant, write this down. Shirts and T-shirts for these these ladies and boys.
So Mike and Aaron, we got a good text message question from one of our listeners. They want to know if you were able to pick any person to interview. And I don't know, they didn't mention live or dead, so I guess living or past.
Have you ever tried to interview a dead guy?
Stop it. Who would be y'all's dream guest on the podcast?
For me, I think it'd be Seinfeld. I don't think he'd ever do it, but probably be the get for me.
Seinfeld? Mm-hmm. All right, solid.
Yeah, that one. You, that's a pretty good one. Hard for me to follow that up. I would probably go more on the racing side. I'd probably get one of these guys like Jochen Moss or something like that, where a lot of people actually, because I'm kind of dorky that way, a lot of people maybe not know that person, but that person has won Le Mans so many times, and there's so much history and knowledge that person has to share. So I just love hearing from these old vintage car race car guys, because they're out there, they were out doing it before there was any of this crash safety stuff.
Yeah.
You know, not that there are more men because of it. It was just the times. But I just love to hear that like grit. And they're like, oh, well, you know, in the middle of the night, the shifter broke in my hand or something. And then we had to like macrame something. And, you know, we ended up just using like a dolly or something like that. And you hear these weird things. And there's always some of those rich history and stories. So I think one of those kind of race car driver, like vintage from the 70s type of guys.
Totally. And also now it sounds like you also do know how to macrame and macrame dollies. Not a lot of guys would know that those little dollies that you put on top of your antique furniture were macrame.
Exactly.
It's a good skill to have.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. I know it is. So
master of none, many skills, master of none.
Right, I feel you on that. That's for sure. That's like our whole family. What are y'all going to talk about this upcoming Thursday?
So we have some more. There's some new stuff coming down the line in Porsche. Things are being sped up as far as the EV market. There's going to be a lot more hybrid stuff coming from Porsche. So we're probably going to discuss some of the pros and cons of that and what that's going to do basically to the Porsche chemical makeup of what their lineup is going to look like moving into the future.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to that too much.
You and me both, my friend. I'm on the side of I'm going kicking and screaming. I don't really like it.
It'll be interesting how they with the hybrid. I haven't read about it. I guess we lost our Auto Week subscription or something, and I'm too lazy to go online. What's the powertrain, do you know, or do they know for the hybrid?
So they're probably going to go, it's probably going to be a turbo car, what they're going to use, and they're going to bump down the liter size. We're probably looking at something like a 2.5 liter twin turbo married up to something that's kind of in between the transmission and the engine, where it's going to be integrated and it's going to be driven at the same time. It's not going to be traditional as opposed to it's going to be its own cell. So it's going to actually be built into the drivetrain of the car. So that should give it they're estimating another 200 to 300 horsepower bump with that hybrid in there. So the displacement goes down probably around 2 or 300.
Somehow this radio show just flies by. Aiden's playing the music, which means that we got to wrap it up. Mike and Aaron, I am so happy. This is so cool to have y'all on. Thank you. If y'all are listening, guys, you should check out the PCar podcast. PCar
Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
All right. See you next Saturday.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of PCar Talk. Connect with us on Instagram at PCar Talk or online at PCarTalk.com.